Hi, welcome to the continuing series of working with Scribus. In this lecture, we're going to talk about working with shapes. In the Working with Frames lecture, we briefly discussed how to create frames that involve shapes. In this lecture, we're going to go into a little bit more detail. One of the things that you should take note of is that shapes are all vector drawings, which means that they can be resized and edited after they're created. As we learned in the Working with Frames lecture, you can insert a shape by just typing the letter S and then drawing a shape. The default shape will be a rectangle. If, however, that's not the shape that you're looking for, if you look for insert shapes, you'll notice that we have quite a number of predefined shapes that we can insert. Under default shapes, you see various types of shapes here that we could select. And then under arrows, we see different kinds of arrows. Under flowchart, we see different things that we might use if we were documenting a process or a computer program. And then, of course, we have additional shapes here and some special characters as well. All right, so for our example here, let's choose a default shape is a triangle. So we'll go here, select triangle, and then when I draw, you'll see that the shape that is created is a triangle. Now you'll notice that the default color for a shape is black. If you want to change that, you can go under File, then you can select Document Setup, and then under Tools, you can select the color that you want to have with regard to different activities here or different types of characters here. So for shapes, we would go to the shape icon, click on that, and then you can see we can change the line color, we can change shading, we can have the shapes automatically filled with a degree of shade, the different line types we might have, similar things that you've probably seen in illustration programs. And just as you expect, if you drag the shape, it will change its size. Another way to resize or to size an object or shape would be to go to the Insert Shape and let's choose a different default here. Let's choose a circle. And then instead of clicking and dragging with the mouse where we would not necessarily get a perfect circle, we could just click on the page and then a menu opens up that lets us choose the actual size. So let's keep this, let's make this a exactly 2 inches and click on this here and get all zeros. And we've got proportion clicked, so when we click elsewhere, we should also get 2 inches. All right, and then we click on OK, and we get a perfect circle that is exactly 2 inches in diameter. Next, let's look at the insert polygon. A polygon is just basically a multi-sided shape. It's restricted, unlike shape, which could be any combination of lines. This polygon has specific characteristics that maintain equal line size and as well as angle. So when we click on properties, you see the default is 4 corners, which is basically a square, and then the number of corners as we increase, we go to a pentagon, a hexagon, septagon, octagon, and so on. So you see the number, basically the number of corners or the number of lines that you would be creating. And then rotation is obvious. What's not so obvious is this apply factor. So let's look at that. So let's go back to um, a hexagon, and we will then use this apply factor. And you see, if you have an apply factor that goes greater than 0, what you'll start to notice is that the shape is slowly changing, expanding outward. Or if you do a negative number here, going up instead of down, okay, now we have a negative number, and you see that the shape starts changing towards the center. And these lines are still straight lines. What we could do is we can change them into rounded or curved lines. So by increasing, you see the lines start changing from straight lines to curved lines. So this is an interesting tool that you can use to play with shapes that you may want to have in your document. And just quickly, if we look at the context menu for one of these shapes, you see that we have way fewer options than we did for text and images, and we've covered all of these before. So let's look at what we can do with editing shapes. So what are some of the things we can do with these shapes? Well, one of the things is we could convert a shape to another type of frame. So for example, I want to take this triangle and I want to turn it into a text frame. Now what I can do is click on it and get text. So let's take text from my demo document and put it here, and you see now I've got text that automatically goes into my triangle, and as I reshape it, of course, more text would come in depending on the size. Alright, what might I do with a odd shape like this? Well, perhaps I might want to convert it to an image, and then I can import the image using get image, and let's use my picture again of the steak and ravioli, and as you know, it's needs to be adjusted to the frame. And once again, you see that my picture is smaller than the frame itself, so then I can right click and then I can adjust the frame to the image. So now the image fully fills the frame. Now I can also resize to make that larger. And as you can see, as I stretch this, the picture is no longer filling the frame again, so I could just do another adjust frame to image, and you have an example. It's probably not the best picture for this, but it illustrates the purpose. Alright, let's look at a few more things that we can do with shape. So let's insert another shape. The default, let's look at a regular rectangle. And then we can right click on properties and go to the shape properties, and you see what various things we can do here. So one of the first things that we can do is we can round the corners. So if you click up here, you'll notice that now my rectangle has rounded corners. Another quick edit is this box right next to the edit box, in which we can transform our existing shape into a different shape. So for example, let's say I didn't want the this contoured rectangle anymore. I wanted to change it to something else. I would just click on it, and now I've got a different shape. Okay, the most important tool in this properties box is the edit tool. If I click on edit while I've got a shape highlighted, you'll suddenly see that I now have a nodes dialog box that opens up, which is going to allow me to do multiple things to this shape. Now, one of the things to note is that when you have a sharp point, you're going to see these blue nodes, but where you have some curve or smoothing, you're going to see these magenta control points. Now, to make this, as you can see, we have quite a number of control points here. So to make this a little bit easier to work with, let's transform this into a simpler type of shape, like for example here, a flowchart shape. All right, so now you see we have fewer nodes and fewer control points, so it'll be easier to explain what's going on here. So when the nodes dialog box opens, you'll see that the first button is clicked, and this button, as you can see, is to move nodes. So I can click on a node and I can drag it, and you'll notice now the node will change its shape. Now if I want to move a control point, I can click on the fifth button here, and then as you can see, when I click on that, I'm changing something that is connected to the control point. So I'm working on images here that will change the rounding of the shape. I think the best way to learn these is to just try using them. So you see we've got other options about using a Bezier curve, about using changing the path horizontally or vertically for flipping. We can also do other movements here, as you see. We can also change degrees here and so on. So it's mostly with these tools up at the top are to make the shape different, and the ones under here are more focused on rotating. You also can use these tools to make the shape larger or smaller, and you can, as I said, play with these. And again, the X and Y positions, which we're used to. So this is a very interesting tool to use if you're interested in drawing your own shapes. Okay, let's clean this up a little bit, and let's get into the discussion of using the flow around the text flow around objects, which is really what a lot of this is useful for. So I'm going to keep this particular shape here, and I'm going to insert a full text box. So let's do insert text frame, and it's going to cover everything here. Let's just bring it down to the bottom, and we're going to insert some text. So get it from my document here, and you see that there's no text flowing because when I click on this shape, and you see I have text flow disabled. Now if I click on use the frame shape, then what you're going to see is that so I have to click on the frame itself. Alright, that's right, we haven't gone over layers yet, but I need to, for this particular text box, I need to send it, for the properties, I need to send it to the lower level, and then once I've done that, so let's say let's make it a lower level, one level down, and then once I do that, I can now click on the shape, and then I can edit the shape to use the text, the frame shape, and now you see my text flows around this particular shape, and if I move it, then the text will change as well. it'll automatically flow around. Now this isn't the best shape for flowing around text, but you see the point here. Alright, so as I said, this doesn't look very good. So another thing we can do is to force the text to not follow the contour of the shape, but rather follow the contour of the frame. So that we can do by clicking on bounding box. And now you'll notice what happens is that the shape, the text flows around the actual box, not the actual contour of the shape. Okay, as we can see, the using bounding box did not do exactly what we had hoped. We still have text hanging out over here, which doesn't look right. So one of the things that we can do is click on that shape, go to the shape editing, and switch it to use contour line. And then when we go back into the edit mode, you will see all the contour nodes. And what we can do is we can drag the nodes to go outside the areas that, sorry, I missed a step. Undo that. Use contour line, we want to edit contour line. Don't forget that step, that's important. And now if I drag the nodes over out of the out of the frame and into the space where we have text, you can see that now when I click on this, I will have some of the, well, let's click and see how it looks. All right, so we end editing, and we can then move this a little bit and see, is it doing what we want? Not quite, so we can go back into the edit, and we can edit contour line, and we can experiment some more to see what it is that we need to move out of the way so that we have a better distribution around our object. This is looking good. So we end editing, and now you see that the shape, that we don't have any text over here in the shape, and perhaps the shape is outside the frame now. We might want to make it a little bit smaller. It still follows the contour, so we don't have any issues here. Now we might want to experiment here a little bit to see if we can't close up this base, but you get the idea here about how if you have an irregular shape, you can use contour line to make the text flow better around the shape when just using frame shape itself doesn't work well.